Thanks for tuning in to Shootie School. In this video, we'll be learning about the browser tab in EZDrummer 2. If you're looking for a beginner's video, I recommend watching my easy guide to EZDrummer 2 video first. Because here, I assume you've already watched my other advanced series videos, which I'll list below, so there's no need for an introduction or specifications. There are more EZDrummer 2 tutorials available on my Shootie School channel. Don't forget to check them out. Let's get started. The browser tab should also give EZDrummer 1 users a familiar place to start when using EZDrummer 2. The search tab here is another way to sort through your MIDI files, which we'll get to in another video on my channel. This browser page is basically the filing cabinet of everything MIDI. As you click on a folder in the left panel, it expands to the next panel to reveal the styles and time signature folders. And those folders open up to song folders. And in each of those song folders will be the groove folders, which contains different variations of individual song sections. Let's take a closer look at the first column. If you've only purchased EZDrummer 2, you will only see 2 folders here. As you can see in the orange bold labels, I also have my Superior Drummer MIDI files, my add-on packs, the libraries that came with EZDrummer 2, my EZX libraries, which are expansion packs, and over here is where my user MIDI can be saved and sorted for non-tune track MIDI that I've created or added myself. Let's stay in the EZDrummer 2 stock libraries for now so everyone can follow along. Let's click on EZDrummer 2 Modern Vintage. Remember, if you mouse over something and wait, you may see a tooltip to help you out, especially here where the labels are getting cut off. Let's look at the bold orange labels. EZDrummer will divide up the MIDI files in a few ways depending on what products you're browsing through. Here in the Modern library, we see the first column divided into different tempos with the word ballad meaning slow. And underneath each orange heading, it is broken down into feel and time signature, which is really valid. If you're looking to only create in the 4/4 time signature, for example, you'll know not to bother with these 12/8, 6/8, or 3/4 grooves, though it's possible to combine them. Now, specifically for the EZDrummer 2 Modern Vintage and some of the other EZXs, once you decide on a generic tempo and start clicking through the folders, you'll start revealing entire songs in the next panel, and the folders under each song will break down into individual song parts. Keep in mind, I have not explained any hard, fast rules yet on what to do because there are none. You don't have to choose MIDI files all from the same song. This experience is all about mixing and matching. And just because this song says a certain BPM here, meaning the tempo in beats per minute, doesn't mean that's how fast it will play or should be played. And now that we've decided what song we want to look through, we see each part of the song separated out into groove folders. Let's click on the verse and reveal some MIDI files in the next panel that we can play with. There are multiple MIDI files here which represent different variations for the verse of this song. Again, there are no rules. This could be the intro of your song if you wanted, and not the verse. These MIDI files being categorized as structure elements may come in handy later if you continue learning about EZDrummer 2, and I'll show you that in my song creator video. Let's click on the little play icon next to the MIDI file name to audition the groove. The file will continue to loop until you hit the play button again to stop it. This is how you audition each MIDI file from the top of the groove so you hear the beat from the very beginning every time. Each MIDI file will have a small white playhead that gives you an idea of where you are in the groove. If you're accurate enough with your mouse, you can even click and move around the groove like this, but clicking, not dragging. A way to audition MIDI files faster is click on a MIDI files play icon to audition it, and instead of stopping it, just click on the next MIDI files play icon. This will switch to the next MIDI file and let you hear that new beat from the beginning as well, like this. Now, if you click on the name of the next MIDI file you want to audition and not the play icon, the next file will pick up playing in the bar where the last MIDI file left off seamlessly, like this. Keep an eye on that white playhead and watch them transition perfectly, as opposed to hitting the play icon. You can't hit your spacebar to start individual MIDI file playback because it will start your song track playback. But you can hit your spacebar to stop individual MIDI file playback if you wanted. And lastly, if you double click on the name of a MIDI file, it will play only once, no looping. Now, when you hear a MIDI file play back, keep in mind you're hearing it at the tempo that is selected down here in the transport area, your project tempo. 120 is the default unless you're using EZDrummer 2 with your DAW, in which your DAW decides the tempo playback. Now that we understand the tempo we're hearing these files at, the Preview Original Tempo button up here will temporarily let you hear the MIDI file as its intended tempo that it was recorded at. Again, there are no rules. I don't even think this is a suggestion. But sometimes you'll audition a file that seems too fast or too slow, and you might wonder how the beat was intended to be heard, so the Preview Original Tempo button comes in handy, or in some cases can give inspiration. Also, if you drag a MIDI file to the song track while the Preview at Original Tempo button is active and your song track is completely empty, it will change the tempo in EZDrummer 2 automatically to the original tempo of that MIDI file. Next to this button is a tempo button. This will allow you to hear and automatically reprogram your MIDI files to play at halftime, regular time, which is the default, double time, and it will literally try to cram your MIDI file into a different time signature, though results may vary with the latter. What's amazing about this button is it's not changing the tempo of your song unless you still have the Preview Original Tempo button activated. Halftime, double time, and the other variants maintain their current tempo selected in your EZDrummer's project or your DAW. Not only that, what is extra crazy awesome is if you like what you hear under this tempo menu, with exception to the default, it will lengthen or remap out your MIDI file when you drag it or copy it to your song track. Here, we have Variation 1 selected in the panel, and I'll drag it to the soundtrack. Now, with Variation 1 still selected, I'll change the tempo menu to halftime and drag it to the song track. Look, it's twice as long. This is awesome. Notice next to the Variation 1 name there's an asterisk indicating that this is not the original anymore. But why? Because it's now reprogrammed to play at halftime feel. So this asterisk could be a hint that you should save this new file from the song track into your user MIDI folder if you'd like, because once we change our tempo menu back to default, that variation in the column will change as well, like this. See? No more asterisk. More on saving your manipulated MIDI files in a bit. Let me select the double time option and drag it below. You can see how short the MIDI block is now, because it's playing twice as fast, and I'll drag the other two options down quickly that change the time signature. Not to 4/4, but to other potential time signatures. These last two options change the MIDI file speed by 1.5 times slower or faster. And it's not like the drummer is recomposing the beat for you, so results may vary depending on your situation on whether it's a usable beat or not. Now, see the MIDI blocks in your song track? Notice every block is a different length, but it's from the same exact MIDI file, just manipulated with the tempo menu. These are great options to have, and it's really a killer feature. Also, next to the tempo menu is a velocity slider. This will adjust the overall performance of how hard your drummer is hitting, not the volume he's playing at, though it could be confused as volume. Let me clear the song track. Now I'll redrag Variation 1 to the song track, but with a lower velocity setting. And notice the asterisk comes up again, letting us know we changed the default file with the velocity slider. Now I'll adjust the velocity setting for Variation 1 again, but with a greater velocity, and drag it down. Let's play a few measures back to back. Notice the velocity change. Again, this changed the velocity to every instrument in the whole drum kit at the same time in the MIDI file. You can adjust individual instrument velocities if you right-click on the MIDI file in the song track and select Edit Playstyle, which I'll cover in my advanced Edit Playstyle video. Now we've covered how to audition MIDI files and how to change their tempo and velocity in the Browser tab. I'll clear out our MIDI blocks. Lastly, about what you can do in this final panel is select a MIDI file. Now you can see the small drop-down menu icon to the right of each file, which you can then click to reveal. Or you can just right-click on any MIDI file to also reveal the same menu. Here, you can copy this file, which means you can paste it down here in the song track. This is the exact same process as manually dragging the file to the song track, where it literally says drag MIDI song blocks here. Next in the list, you can select Search with Tags, which will open up your search tab and try to match your beat to other similar sounding beats. Next, you can select Search with Tap to Find, which will bring you over to the Search tab and load your beat into the Tap to Find engine, which by the way can also be used as a generic way to edit your beats as well as finding new similar beats. The last two options, Search with Tags and Tap to Find, will be covered in detail in their own respective videos on my channel. Next on the list is Use with Song Creator, which will expand a panel above the song track and attempt to find parts for the rest of your potential song, also covered in one of my advanced Song Creator videos. And last in the list is Add to User MIDI, which will send the file to the panel over here under the User MIDI section. And since we're here now, let's talk about it. This panel can be hidden or revealed by clicking this button up here. And there's a small bar you can use to resize the panels. How you use user MIDI, meaning your personal MIDI files, is case sensitive depending on how you work. You could add files to your user MIDI folder that interest you from the EZDrummer 2 library to stay organized with ideas like this, where you can right-click and copy them as before, or rename and delete them to stay organized. You can also send them to the Search tab or Tap to Find to discover new beats, or send them to the Song Creator down here like with other MIDI files. Or what's new is you can show them in the Browser tab. Let's say you forgot where the user MIDI file came from and wanted to recall it. Just click Show in Browser. Or even cooler, you can reveal where this file is on your computer by clicking on Show in Explorer or Finder if you're on a Mac. Maybe you want to email it to a buddy or import it into a different program. Now you know where it is on your computer. One thing to remember is EZDrummer 2 will always remember what's in your user MIDI panel here. Whether you save your work only in a DAW session, or if you save it in EZDrummer 2 itself, or even if you don't save anything and hit Don't Save when closing EZDrummer, it will be there until you remove it manually. This is good to keep in mind if you have a specific workflow, because I don't need to see my song ideas for a rock song I wrote last month while I'm starting a new ballad project today. Let me clear this up by right-clicking and hitting Remove. Keep in mind that this will delete the file out of your user MIDI folder and on your computer as well, but not from the factory EZDrummer 2 library where it may have derived from. Speaking of that default folder, this orange user MIDI bar up here actually represents that exact folder on your hard drive. Right-click on it or select the arrow to the right to reveal its menu. If you select Open in Explorer or Finder on Mac, you'll see that it takes us to that same location on our computer again, which is now empty. With this folder location, you can simply drag and drop your own MIDI files here. Let me grab one from my desktop. You may have to restart EZDrummer 2 to see your new files show up, since I don't see a rescan button. Here, under this menu, you can choose to add folder, and you're prompted to name it right away. I'll call this Cool Song Idea. Now notice there's no user MIDI files in the panel below. Let me select the user MIDI folder above again. Look, my MIDI file that I added is back again. This might be confusing to us visually. It might seem that the top user MIDI folder has hierarchy over the other folders since it's not indented, and that it might let you see in a cascading effect all the MIDI files in all of the subfolders, but it doesn't. Let me put a subfolder in my new folder like this. And now I'll drag a beat in there. No matter what the hierarchy or order of your folder or subfolder structure is, you will only be able to see what's in the currently selected folder below. And don't forget, the user MIDI with the human head thing at the top is a folder itself, not just a label for this panel. Now that we know this, we can plan out how we want to use this MIDI panel. Let me delete all the new folders I created. Keep in mind, MIDI files inside of folders that you delete will also be deleted, so proceed with caution. A way I might work is create my first folder as my new album, if people still use that term. And then inside that folder, I might put my individual songs for this project. Let's say it's a 4-song EP. If I collapse and re-expand my new album folder, it will reorganize my subfolders alphabetically. Now, I might start going through my browser tab and start finding parts for my whole album at the same time. What a time saver to be working on multiple projects or songs at the same time. If I find a chorus that I think will work for song 3 in my user MIDI panel, I could left click and drag that file to that folder. Or I could pre-select the song 3 folder by clicking on it and right click on a beat and select add to user MIDI to assure that MIDI file goes to the correct folder. Let's select our song 2 subfolder and go to the search panel real quick. There's no user MIDI panel on the search tab. But if I find a beat I like over here, I could still right-click and select Add to User MIDI. And because I pre-selected my subfolder Song 2, that's where it will go. Let me add a few more files to my Song 3 subfolder. If you want to select multiple user MIDI files in any order, hold Ctrl or Command and select the files. If you want to select multiple user MIDI files in sequence, then select your first file, hold Shift, and select the last file. You can also deselect individual files by holding Ctrl or Command and clicking. This only applies to user MIDI files, not the EZDrummer 2 library files. Let me drag 5 MIDI files to the song track. Let's pretend that these 5 MIDI blocks are our complete song. If you select all the blocks by dragging a marquee around them, you can drag your entire song to your user MIDI folders, and it will be saved as a single MIDI file. A good way to back up your work, or save a temporary idea before cleaning out your song track. Now, if you right-click or select the individual folder drop-down menu arrow, you'll be able to delete or remove that folder. Again, keep in mind the MIDI files within that folder will also get deleted. You can also rename folders, add another subfolder, open your MIDI in Explorer or Finder, or lastly, you can manage MIDI libraries. All things you already know how to do except the latter. Let's delete all the folders I made. And as you can see how destructive it could be if you simply hit remove on a folder that has many subfolders within it. Take careful note. That stuff is gone forever. There is no undo function, and it does not end up in your computer's trash bin. It's toast. Now, if you right-click and select Manage MIDI Files, this panel can also be accessed through your main menu settings here. You could mark this Include in Search checkbox, and all user MIDI you added to your user MIDI panel will now be included in the Search tab. The Search tab is covered in another video. What is super cool is that you can have your own MIDI stasher on your computer and create your own user library by simply clicking on Add Folder to User Library button and locate it on your computer. Let's create our own user library right now. I'll create this on my desktop, but it can be located anywhere on your computer. I'll start a new folder called Shootie Kit, then a subfolder for different tempos as an example of workflows similar to Toontrack's libraries. Then a subfolder of song parts. Again, this is a single example of an infinite amount of workflow possibilities. Then I'll put my MIDI files in here. Technically, as discussed with the user MIDI previously, I can put any amount of folders and beats anywhere I want. Lastly, I'll add a fourth hierarchy of folders and put one beat in there so I can show you one more thing in a minute. Watch me click through these folders real quick so you understand the order of subfolders. Now, I'll go to my user MIDI folder. Right-click and select Manage MIDI Files and add folder to User Libraries and navigate to our new user MIDI folder on our desktop. The Include in Search checkbox has nothing to do with what I'm talking about right now, but it is optional. These beats could show up in our search results on the Search tab. We just need to see our new folder in this list. That's it, which it is, so let's hit OK. Our user MIDI folder is unchanged, but over here in the Libraries panel is our new Shootie Kit folder. This type of customization is really awesome, and when we click on it, it will take us through our folder structure. Even though we only have 4 panels to work with, we can still continue to click on this 4th folder and open it up into a 5th panel. And that is where these arrows in the upper left come in handy, to be able to back out of big folder structures. But more about these arrows is they don't just navigate forward and backward through panels, they actually step backwards and forwards through all the MIDI files you have auditioned. So if you heard something 2 minutes ago that you want to find again, you could keep using this back arrow and see what you were looking at minutes ago, as well as the forward arrow to get back to where you left off. So now our workflow has really expanded. Whether you want to use your user MIDI panel or literally create your own EZDrummer 2 user library. As you start going advanced with EZDrummer 2, these options of user workflows will come in handy. And over here to the right is the Manage MIDI Libraries button, which I already covered with the user MIDI folder. So that is what I have for you today, covering the Browser tab. If you're feeling comfortable with the Browser tab at this point, move right on to my next advanced video. If not, play around in the browser, drag some files to the song track, have some fun, take a break, decompress, and then come back to me and we'll keep rocking this. All comments and corrections are welcome below. If I missed any features specifically for the browser page, please let me know. Like and subscribe if you learned something today, and check out my channel Shootie School for other EZDrummer 2 tutorials. Take care and rock on.